Welcome back to Severe and Ben in the Morning, 1620 Zone, managing editor, Hail Varsity magazine. Hail Varsity and the magazine joining us here on 1620 Zone. Brandon Vogel. Good morning, Brandon. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, man. So we ended the show yesterday talking about offensive stuff rate and where Nebraska was last year. It was about 19% of the time they either no gain or lost yardage. In your opinion, in terms of that stat, when you're putting stats together that matter, how big is offensive stuff rate in that run game?
Well, obviously it depends a little bit on the offense you run, but for what Nebraska runs, like that's too high. And I mean, I think that's kind of a reflection of where things have been for the past 2 years with sort of the handoff run game. Nebraska just hasn't been strong or consistent enough in that regard. And, you know, it results in wear and tear on the quarterbacks. It results in the potential, I think, for more fumbles when you look at upping the quarterback carries. And I don't know. I mean, I still look at this offensive line. I was high on them going into last year. I'm pretty high on them going into this year. It's just that part of it hasn't added up when you take out the quarterback carries and just look at the run game from that perspective. So seeing a stuff rate like that, you know, it's kind of an issue.
We were talking with Sipple earlier about kind of the level of importance of Illinois, and I asked him if he felt like this team emotionally in year 4 was prepared to handle a hiccup, right? Like could they stub their toe and still manage the rest of the season? If I gave you a formula to put together for this 2021 team in terms of what's ailed them, how would you rank talent, psyche, and execution? Go from where they're the weakest to where you think of the three. Go weakest to strongest. Talent, psyche, and execution.
Psyche, execution, talent.
So talent is last.
Talent is the least concerning to me. So psyche would be the most concerning. They have enough talent to, I think, do what they need to do. They have enough talent to produce better results than they have over the past 3 years. Maybe that's the best way to say it. Like, you always want more, and you're going to need more to reach even higher levels. But after the past 3 years, kind of getting into the division race is kind of the minimum starting point for me for them to really show some progress. And I think they have the talent to do that. So the psyche part of it, you know, we've seen them get derailed by things. And last year was uniquely challenging in that regard, but it was uniquely challenging for everyone. Execution, it's still not it's not at a kind of top 15, top 20 level. But you've seen, or I have seen flashes of that where, okay, they're pretty good. Like, you get them in the right kind of circumstances, and they can go on a little bit of a run there. So I think you're right. That Illinois game is huge. It's you know, a unique build-up to that. I know you just, you know, start a week earlier, but you're going to kind of have the stage to yourself for a large part of that. You know, there's not a ton of games in that week 0. And you got to go on the road against a team playing their first game under a new coach who's kind of a brand name still in the Big Ten. So it's a big challenge.
I certainly agree with you this year that they have, on paper, better talent than I think they've had the first 2 years. But are you basing it off of recruiting rankings? Because, as I say, at the end of the year, when people look and say, here are all conference guys, or when the draft rolls around, guys are getting drafted, is it a situation where you're looking at the recruiting rankings and that's why you say they have enough talent? Because if that's true, that means they're not developing. But what do you see in those players that you think that they do have the talent based off of what?
Yeah, I mean, so starting from a recruiting rankings is kind of like the only measure we have at the time they come in.
Right.
You know, Nebraska traditionally, it's tops in the West.
Yeah.
Now, you get to the end of the year, you're correct. You look at the all-conference and the other type of measures like that, and it doesn't look that way. I guess where I'm coming from with that is I don't see a vast difference between Nebraska, to the good or the bad, between Nebraska's talent and the rest of the teams in its division. Like, it's there. It could win with what it has. You do now, as we know, if you are kind of using recruiting rankings as a starting point there, you've got to deduct 30 to 40% every time, because That's about what you're losing in terms of your scholarship signees. Right. I mean, other teams lose players too.
Sure.
So I think that's it. And there have been times, particularly last year was better. The 2 years before that, as you mentioned, where you kind of look at Nebraska and be like, well, there's not a ton of depth here. Like you look at kind of 22 versus 22 in any given game, and they might match up okay. But it doesn't go a lot deeper than that. And I do think that part of it's changing.
All right, so this is what I was saying. This was either yesterday or today. Michael, you may have to help me out. I said, almost verbatim, I said, you have to win with depth here. The talent will come. Is that kind of what is, and I mean kind of almost unique to Nebraska within this Big Ten conference. Is that kind of how you see it?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I do think that's a little bit unique to Nebraska. During its greatest run, I think that was the case. And now there was a lot of talent on those teams, of course. But for me, when I think back to them, they're almost kind of defined by their next man up nature. And the next man up, you might have the 4-star as your top line guy, and the next guy might be a walk-on. And I think that is kind of where we get into the development discussion of, okay, well, this guy came as a 4-star, this guy came in as a walk-on. How do we elevate both of them? And I think that's something that's been lacking at Nebraska. And I think, a lot of this is too just the Big Ten. You got to be deep in the Big Ten. And I think that's truer than it was in the Big 12.
Last thing, Brandon, in terms of the expansion to 12 teams, bigger, is it a move that helps the Big Ten more, or could it be a move that helps Nebraska more? You know what I mean? Like, who gets the most value out of going to 12 in terms of, is it the conference, or do you think it's Nebraska having a chance to get better?
I think it's probably Nebraska because, everybody's kind of gone back and looked like, okay, since 2014, it would have been this. And in most cases, the Big Ten's getting 2 teams in, if I recall correctly. I haven't looked that closely at it myself.
Yeah.
I think, so one, I think across the board, assuming the division structures stay mostly the same, a division title matters more now. It's hard to see in a Power 5 conference where a division champ isn't going to be in the hunt going into that final weekend.
Right.
So for Nebraska, that helps them. And just, I think it changes our definition of success as we get a little bit further down the road. Going to the Citrus Bowl is nice, but getting into the playoff as maybe the 11th team, it feels bigger because you've still got a shot to keep playing real games that matter instead of this one fun, but ultimately an exhibition game at the end of the year. So for where Nebraska's at, I think Nebraska stands to benefit a little bit more than the Big Ten.
Brandon, we appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, B.
Thanks, you too, guys.
Brandon Vogel, Hail Varsity. Now, senior handicapper,
really
Vegas Insider, MajorWager.com. Follow him on Twitter. You're going to get great information there. Vegas B. Edwards. Brian joining us here this morning. Good morning, Brian. How you doing?
Good morning, fellas. What's happening?
Well, we're trying to make it. I'm sure you're ecstatic, aren't you?
Man, I could hardly go to sleep last night.
What's your ticket? What's your ticket on them? What is it? Winning the title or winning the East? Which one?
So I have a little bit of both. Now they're small plays, but when it's 100 to 1, small becomes fairly big.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of 100 to 1, and then I have some 35 to 1 on the East, just the East specifically.
Gotcha.
And, I got to admit, I probably would have hedged a little bit had Milwaukee not been minus 500, but I couldn't do that to hedge. So
it's funny. Michael thought that was he's like, oh, that's kind of a big number.
Yeah. Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I'm feeling pretty good, but nothing's done yet. Knock on wood.
Of course.
Craziest line of the day, I think, as they get Paul back and the Clippers pretty much tinkled it down their leg. Still basically a pick 'em, plus minus 1.
Yep.
Boy, that thing stinks.
I like the Clippers, y'all.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's where you were heading on that, Damon, or if you were heading the other way. And obviously, Phoenix looks absolutely terrific, and conventional wisdom would say they'll look better with Chris Paul back. But, you know, and I know that Phoenix is better than that. Well, I don't know if they're better than Utah, but man, the Clippers have been down 0-2. I know Paul George missed those 2 critical free throws that I was asked yesterday. You know, how much is that in his head? And I was like, it's not in his head at all. I think if he was in his head, it would have been Game 3 going into the Dallas series where he had played so poorly in games 1 and 2. He's playing spectacular. I mean, he had 2 or 3 clutch shots to get them ahead there in the last 2 minutes before he missed those free throws. I love how Terrence Mann is playing in Kawhi's absence. The Clippers have gone 8-1 after falling down 0-2. They're in desperado mode, obviously. Mm-hmm. I think they get it done tonight. I like the Clippers.
I was surprised that the number was 8 yesterday, the Hawks getting 8. And a little bit 8.5, you could have, if you waited around a little bit, you could have gotten that. But now it's 7.5 for Game 2. You like Atlanta again?
You know, I do. Certainly not as much as I liked it last night, and I don't know that I'll do any money line just because I probably would if I didn't already have all these future bets. So,
right, sure.
There's no reason for me to get too overly aggressive. But, look, a warning, if you will, the Hawks, you know, did win Game 1 at the Knicks and Game 1 at Philly, and then they lost by double digits and didn't cover in both of those Game 2s. But those weren't like, you know, pimp slaps. They're really, in both games, it was both teams making a run early fourth quarter when Trey was out. And those 2 particular games, Lou Williams just didn't play well, whereas he has usually played well in those little, you know, stretches that he gets. And they're playing them together a little bit, especially when Lou gets going. But I still can't turn down the Hawks at plus 7.5, even with the, you know, Game 2 hiccups they've had after winning Game 1 in the previous series.
Let's talk a little UFC. It's going to heat up here in a hurry. What do you like this weekend?
Yeah, I like Volkov. You know, Cyril Gane is a huge, big, heavyweight specimen, but Volkov's got plenty of size to counter that. In fact, I'm looking forward to see him face off. I mean, I think Volkov's actually the bigger man, maybe not as thick, but taller. And I like Volkov, man. He's in really good form right now. And this Cyril Gane guy is a handful, but I think Volkov is a dog, plus 130, 135-ish. I think that's the way to go.
Brian, we appreciate it, man. Have a great weekend. Good luck tomorrow night.
All right, fellas. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Right,
thanks,
no
B.
Brian Edwards, majorwager.com.
We can do. You want to do top 3 birthdays real quick?
Go ahead.
I'll pick the 3 most popular.
Three most popular, real quick.
How old is Mick Fleetwood?
82.
He's tall in the saddle at 83.
He's only 74 years old.
Whoa, he looks old.
How long is probably the guy that would beat all of us in the 40? Rich Eisen.
No, he wouldn't.
You get him?
I get him.
You might get him walking.
He's 53.
Rich is a little bit older than me. I think he's 55.
He's 53 next year, Shane.
Only 52. He's my age then. Okay. We worked for the same boss for a while.
And I had to put Shane's girlfriend on here. How old is Minka?
Stevie Nicks.
Minka Kelly.
Oh. Is she like 37?
If she was my girlfriend, I'd know.
I hope so.
Eh.
What was she, the OC? What was the show she was on?
She's
the
been
Hills or something?
I'd be really cool.
Friday Night Lights.
I'd be really cool if she was my girlfriend and I didn't know her age, though.
Wow.
35.
Can't stand prosperity, can you? She is 41 years old.
Wow.
Lionel Messi was the other one I was going to do.
Oh, Messi's 33 years old.
That was Lionel Messi, Shane.
Oh, he's been around a lot longer than that.
38.
It's 34.
34.
1 point lead on a Friday.
Crossover coming up next.